recent riots in Oakland.
We will never solve generational systemic injustice with looting, burning, destruction of property, and killing in the name of justice.
The time may be right for Congress to address at least that part of the problem.
Fox's Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill. In Seattle, protesters have created what they call an autonomous zone near a police station abandoned earlier this week.
Basically, what you have here is the city of Seattle surrendering a 7-block area, and from what we saw, it doesn't look like it's going to be returned anytime soon. The protesters who took it over are calling it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. The crowd fluctuates, just occupying the streets and listening to speakers. There's also food, making it look kind of like an urban commune. One tent had a sign saying "No Cop Co-op." We saw several dozen homeless tents and one labeled a public tent. But there's also a militarized field. Each of the 6 entrances has barricades and guards.
That's Fox's Dan Springer following a tour of that zone on Wednesday. Oakland's school superintendent backing a proposal to eliminate the school police force. According to relatives, human remains found in Idaho on Tuesday are those of 2 missing children. 7-year-old J.J. Vallow and 17-year-old Tylee Ryan hadn't been seen since last September. Their mother and stepfather now both in custody. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years. It's also brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Another day on Tall Tales. Another reading of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. Another liftoff in the good ship Tall Tales into the realms of constitutionality, conservatism, and libertarianism. So welcome aboard the good ship Tall Tales. We always start our voyage with a trip to what is called Zemi-i-Kotni. Today is pretty much like every other day. The Daily News has not run a local editorial. They've run something that they attribute to 2 words: wire services. Do you know anybody named Wire Services, Real Joe Cruz?
Never met such a person, sir.
No. Sounds kind of like an interesting guy, doesn't he?
Does.
Like maybe he works for GPA.
It's possible.
Wire Services. But that's who they're attributing today's editorial to, Mr. Wire Services. And its airlines got $25 billion, but aren't giving back. I'm not going to spend any time with it. I'm going to go straight to the Daily Post. And the Post tells us that the bottom line, still no tax relief for struggling small businesses. When it came to giving government of Guam employees and retirees expanded choice of health insurance, a majority of the island senators decided with just a slight delay to move the measure forward for a vote. But, and I'm going to add something in here. When it came time to introduce bills dealing with paying government of Guam double pay, the sergeant at arms had to issue helmets and shoulder pads to aid of the senators because they were so busy getting their bills on file, they were tripping over each other, and he was afraid that someone is going to hurt himself. Yeah. Going back to the editorial. But on a proposed tax relief for small businesses in hopes of helping them survive in this pandemic and supporting the jobs they create, the legislature collectively over the past couple days has been indecisive, and some might even have used delay tactics. On Tuesday, Senator Therese Terlahi attempted to amend Bill 323 with the goal of rolling back the business privilege tax from 5% to 4%. Quote, the rise in the BPT was passed down to many of our families who consume these goods and services. If we're looking to provide relief to our working families, then a full rollback of the BPT is the way to do it, Terlahi stated in a press release. Terlahi's proposal would have been in effect for 2 years. However, her idea was shot down. I use that phrase too much, shot down. Her idea was shot down after it was considered materially different and out of order by Speaker Tina Rose Marnes, according to Terlahi. Now, we know what a stickler Tina Rose Marnes is on applying the procedures, the legislature procedures, the mechanics of how the legislature operates. We know how much of a stickler she is for doing things exactly right. She wouldn't even think of using the rules of the legislature for partisan ends. She would never even dream of calling an emergency session of the legislature when there's no real emergency. You could never persuade her to waive the public hearing requirement on bills unless there were a real danger to health and safety, except with one exception, and that would be if she wanted to. Other than that, the rules for Senator Tina Rose Mooney Barnes are interesting suggestions. Terlahi's proposal was brought up in a discussion of Bill 323. This measure is in part aimed at helping small businesses and to mitigate the impacts resulting from the Wuhan virus pandemic. So some might agree it isn't off topic, as some in the legislature have decided. The efforts of Terlahi, a Democrat, followed similar efforts by Senator James Moylan, a Republican who has been proposing the rollback of the BPT without success through Bill 9. Bill 9 was introduced more than a year ago. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later on in the day. And in order to foreshadow that discussion, I urge each of you to whistle the theme song for High Noon. We can't play it here on Tall Tales because Facebook would boot us off. But you remember the terms, he made a vow while in state prison, vowed it be my life or his'n. Well, anyhow, just keep that in mind. Jim Moylan's Bill 9. With the public eyes on senators in their re-election in the August primary and the general election in November, Moylan initially succeeded in placing Bill 9 on the agenda for debate on Wednesday afternoon. But after Moylan was able to get Bill 9 fast-tracked, he withdrew the legislation on Wednesday afternoon, saying he wasn't afforded the time to make some critical changes to the measure. Without the flexibility of amending the proposed rollback of the GRT, Moylan felt pinned in a corner. I feel I'm being sabotaged in this position. It's not fair. Okay, Jim, now you listen to Paul Tall Tales once in a while, and you ought to know better than using "it's not fair" as an argument. That argument will get you nowhere on Tall Tales. And I will remind you the rejoinder of John Moore, may he rest in peace, a noted barrister here on the island, who would tell you that a fair is something celebrated in the fall in farming communities to pay special attention to the harvest. There's usually a carnival at the fair, sideshows, etc. So you're right, Jim, it's not fair. Moylan said, in part addressing his statement to Senator Joe San Augustine, the Legislative Finance Committee chairman. Senator Regine Biscoe-Lee felt compelled to stand in defense of the legislature as a body that Moylan's characterization of sabotage is not fair, because Moylan had more than a year to get his measure fine-tuned. So fair, that's the operative word down there at the legislature, fair. About as subjective a word as you'll find in the English language. I guess that's why it's so popular. The Democrat Party then quickly criticized Moylan, saying he's like the guy who sits on the bench blaming the quarterback, but chokes as soon as he's on the field. Boy, I don't know, 2 days in a row. Yesterday, I found myself in the awkward position of agreeing with Carlo Branch, who said that Jim Moylan was just trying to bandwagon on all of the sentimentality arising from the George Floyd matter. And now the Democrat Party is saying that Jim Moylan is like the guy who sits on the bench blaming the quarterback. Put me in, coach, put me in, I'm ready. But chokes as soon as he's on the field. Moylan on Tuesday initially succeeded in introducing an amendment to Bill 323 with the intention of increasing the gross receipts tax exemption thresholds under the Dave Santos Act from $250,000 to $500,000. The amendment initially passed with a vote 8-7. However, 20 minutes later, San Augustine allowed a motion to reconsider the amendment, and this time the amendment failed with a new 6-9 vote. The amendment would have assisted small businesses to attain additional relief, etc. Senators Amanda Shelton and Jose Terlahi changed their votes, voting against the amendment that would have helped small businesses. The bottom line, after all the on and off debate and an eruption of senatorial emotions, there is no tax relief from the legislature for small businesses. The senators can find a way to pass a measure to provide tax relief to small businesses, just like they did to help GovGuam employees and retirees clamoring for different health insurance systems. The problem is there might not be enough willingness at this time to help small businesses and the people who work for them via a tax relief. So I guess Joe San Augustine's rule is that when we have a measure for me, when I'm chairman of the committee of the whole, we'll vote on it. In fact, we may have to vote on it more than once until we get the right result. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Okay, no blue star for you guys today. I agree with the whole idea of rolling back the GRT and increasing the Dave Santos amendment, but the way you handled it, you don't lionize Jim Moylan because he wasn't ready. You know, you don't blame that on the Democrats because Jim Moylan, introduced a bill a year ago, which he's been agitating to get on the floor, and then they really pulled a dirty trick on Jim Moylan. They actually put his bill on the floor. He felt like he was being sabotaged. Kind of reminds me of when not long after she was elected, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, came out with the Green New Deal, which was pretty far-reaching and pretty radical and way, way, way over on the left, and introduced it in the House. And then the Republicans really played a dirty trick on her. That Mitch McConnell, he introduced the same bill in the Senate and brought it to the floor and took a vote on it. And she cried all the way back to her nice Washington, D.C. apartment. How unfair of him to put my bill on the floor. Okay, so let's take a look at the card. This is what I've got. I've got today's card. Of course, I've got Troy and Janella. We're up to 24 days now for Janella. And Tina, an emergency. Tina has not discovered an emergency for 21 days. And I misspoke on Janella. It's been 26 days. And for Tina, it's been 21 days since she alerted us to a danger to the public health or safety. Then I've got some really hot breaking news here. Really. So don't get up. Don't if you have to make a head call, don't do it now. Don't refill your coffee. Don't go to the refrigerator for a cool one because you're going to want to stay tuned for this breaking news. It's called Joan Ugan Chotverus versus Irrelevancy. And I can see the real Joe Cruz furrowing his brow, silently sending me the signal, who in the heck is Joan Ugan Chotverus? Be patient, real Joe Cruz. You'll find out. You don't know who Joan Ugan Chotverus is, real Joe Cruz?
I do know who that is, but I don't know why she's in challenge with something.
Yeah. Well, you'll find out. And then I've got Jim Moylan versus Frank Miller. Do you remember who Frank Miller is? A noted train traveler.
Yeah.
Arriving at what time, real Joe Cruz?
12. High noon.
High noon. Uh-huh.
At 12 p.m., sir.
At 12 if they were as screwed up then as we are now, that movie could have never been made.
True.
Because Frank Miller would have come in at midnight.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and then I've got Joni Kanga Kerr versus Michael San Nicolas. And then I may have to go back to Woke Jim versus Minneapolis as he rides around on his bandwagon. And then I've got Jim Moylan versus Flip Floppers and Tetlahi versus Tetlahi. And then if we get to it, more Kehlani Rages versus Minneapolis. Okay, so let me go through. Troy and Janella had a little, what we might have called a skirt tearing contest in less politically correct days because Janella never complied with the lieutenant governor's order to apologize for muting mics and cutting off reporters. And Troy kept asking the lieutenant governor, hey, when is Janela going to apologize? Finally, Crystal Paco San Augustine issued this statement. Carlo Branch has publicly stated that he directed Ms. Carrera's actions that day, and the lieutenant governor is satisfied that he has taken full responsibility. As the responsible party, the apology was solely his to make. It has been made abundantly clear that this situation will not be repeated. This is from Crystal Paco, also known as Crystal Paco San Augustine. So it has been, let me see here, 26 days since the Crystal Paco pronunciamento. Okay, and then I've got Tina versus emergency. You'll recall on the 20th of May, Tina decided she had to call the legislature into special session, into emergency session. And she also decided that she had to waive the public hearing requirements on the 4 double pay bills because there was a danger to the public health and safety. Well, she hasn't detected any danger to the public health and safety since then. We know that because she hasn't called the legislature into special session. Okay, here comes the big one. Can I have a drum roll for this one? This is Joan Uggan Chotfris versus Irrelevance. This is a KUAM story, and the reporter is Joan Uggan Chotfris. She's right up there with Woodward and Bernstein. You know, I'm surprised the New York Times or the Washington Compost hasn't snapped her up yet. She's one of these eagle-eyed reporters, and here is what she found. Senator Kelly Marsh Titano is hoping Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio will expand the scope and work of the Island Beautification Task Force, which he chairs. In a letter penned to him, the Democrat lawmaker is hoping the IBTF will do more to address the issue of illegal dumping, which has become more prevalent as of late. In November of last year, the senator, that would be Kelly Marsh Titano, authored a public law giving the IBTF the ability to move beyond simple beautification projects and toward developing training programs and real solutions to tackle some of the deeper issues, such as illegal dumping, littering, and vandalism. Talk about breaking news. Wow. Yeah, I got this from the KUAM website. I suppose all of the national wire services are going to pick this up. And I wouldn't be surprised if the other media outlets locally will cover it. You know, I mean, this is really something. I hadn't seen Joan Uggan Chotfris's byline before, but, you know, with the touch that she's got with her ability to ferret out leading edge stories like this and write them up the way she did, I got a feeling we're going to be hearing a lot more from Joan Uggan Chotfris. Wow. Yeah, this is some really breaking news. We'll leave it to Kelly Marsh Titano to be right out there in the leading edge of what's going on here with the serious problems we've got, the Wuhan virus, our economy going to hell in a handbasket, the country the United States on the verge of a communist revolution, the island here caught up in the same mode, doing industrial strength virtue signaling. You know, it took a lot for Joan Uggan Chotfris to dig this story out. Yeah. So I got my blue. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think I'll give her a blue star this time. I guess if I were to give a blue star, let's give credit where credit is due instead of discredit where discredit is due. Kelly Marsh Titano must have a genius for communications to get earned media on a nothing ball story like this, on a nothing burger story like this. She must have someone on her staff who really knows how to work the press. Who could that possibly be, Real Joe Cruz?
Michael Bavacqua, sir.
Yeah.
It was him, sir.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm not going to give Michael Bavacqua a blue star either, but KUAM, you usually do some pretty good stuff, but you got to work on this. This is a travesty. You know, we know that Kelly Marsh Titano would like to be reelected, and we know that the secret, not the secret, but a secret to being reelected is what's called earned media. Not paid advertisements, but when you see your name in a news story in a favorable context, it's called earned media. And the reason it's called earned media is because you take your trusty ruler and you measure the column inches in the story and figure out how much it would cost you to post an ad of that size, given that placement. All right, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
This Father's Day, be one of 7 lucky winners of Circle K's Ultimate Father's Day Package. Get a case of tomahawk steak, a bottle of whiskey, a case of beer, and a Bacchus beer bag. That's a $300 value. Purchase $25 or more in fuel, or any 6-pack or more of Miller Lite, Coors Light, or Blue Moon to receive an entry form. Tune in to The Ray Gibson Show on The Point for more ways to win. Winners will be announced on June 17. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Wait! I've got another breaking story. Byline, Joan Ugun Chatfris. Titano paints her office. KUAM learned this afternoon that Kelly Marsh Titano painted her office. Guess what color she painted it, Real Joe Cruz?
Blue, sir?
It's got to be green. You know,
It's got to be the Green New Deal.
Yeah, otherwise the environmental wackos would beat up on her, right?
Probably, sir.
Yeah. So the story goes on to say, painted her office green. We are now observing the paint drying. We will run footage tonight on KUAM News. Yeah. Well, that was my facetious approach. Pretty close though, right? Pretty believable after this story about the island. Okay. Next on the card, we have Jim Moylan versus Frank Miller. And this is a story from the Post. Tax relief measure withdrawn. Sabotage. That's a quote. Sabotage. That's how Senator James Moylan described the treatment of his tax rollback proposal at the hands of certain fellow lawmakers. After successfully placing the long-pending legislation on the session agenda Wednesday morning, Moylan withdrew the bill that afternoon, following a failed attempt to request time for revisions. Now, I gotta get out my blue pencil here. His attempt to request time for revisions did not fail. He made the request. His request was denied. That's why stuff like that is why you don't get the blue star sometimes, Guam Daily Post. Bill 9-35, Moylan's legislation would have reverted the business privilege tax to 4% from 5%. Moylan later promised to introduce a new bill that would be a tiered approach. Tiered, I wonder what he means by tiered. Tangis? Tumatangis sa mata ito niya bill, nai? But made his feelings known on the session floor Wednesday. Obviously, I do need time to make amendments to this bill. And it's disappointing, and it's unfair that I wasn't allowed that time, as I've seen my other colleagues were. So obviously, I feel I'm being sabotaged in this position. It is not fair. Now, in addition to face masks at the legislature, I suppose if you needed one, the Sergeant at Arms would get you one. I suspect if you needed one, the Sergeant at Arms would probably find you a crying towel, too. Yeah. It's not fair, and therefore I withdraw my Bill 9-35. You know, you guys aren't being fair to me. You wouldn't let me pitch. So I'm going to take my ball and go home. I'll show you. Moylan said during the Committee of the Whole, which had been called to discuss the bill. His statements drew criticism from Senator Raging Bisco Lee, who said she felt compelled to defend the legislature against an untrue and unsubstantiated remark. Wow, is that fair? The notion that the legislature is in a position to debate the lowering of the BPT as a result of, quote, sabotage has no factual foundation, Raging Lee said. The author of this measure introduced the bill in January of last year. If the author is not in a position to amend the legislation 17 months later, that's not because of a conspiracy against the bill. These comments prompted Senator William Castro, who wanted to speak. Now, we don't know if Senator William Castro is a Democrat or Republican. You know, he's not going to be held down to a binary determination on that one, right? He's a trans partisan. These comments prompted Senator William Castro to call on the Legislative Legal Counsel to determine whether Lee could make the remarks under legislative rules. So if counsel said she couldn't, then somehow the reality would be played backwards and those remarks would be erased from everyone's memories. The cause to seek the Legislative Counsel's advice offered a moment of calm following an emotionally charged discussion. Well, isn't that how we make decisions? Don't we make decisions based on emotion? What are we going to make decisions based on reason? That sounds kind of heretical. Following consultation with legal counsel at Legislative Council, Senator Joe San Augustine, overseeing the Committee of the Whole, stated the discussion on Bill 9 had ended. It is now over, San Augustine said. Lee attempted to speak under what's called, quote, point of personal privilege, but was again prevented from speaking further. Mr. Chair, she told San Augustine, it's clear they don't want to hear what they. Now, of course, that has become one of the toughest words in the English language. I used to know what they meant, but I don't anymore. So when she says, Mr. Chair, it's clear they don't want to hear what I have to say, she's probably talking about Jim Moylan, right? She used the word they, and his name had been mentioned earlier. Yeah. So, or does it mean Joe San Augustine himself? They don't want to hear what she has to say. Or does it mean the other Democrats or the other Republicans? It's really, we have so perverted the use of that T-H-E-Y that now no one knows exactly what it means. Yeah. It's clear they don't want to hear what I have to say, because when you speak the truth, many times people try to shut you down. The Democrat Party of Guam later issued a release criticizing Moylan. After 17 months of seeking this bill's placement on the agenda, Senator Moylan now claims that he was sabotaged because a majority of his colleagues agreed that his bill should be debated today. Boy, what a dirty trick they played on Jim Moylan, huh? The release stated in part, Senator Moylan's like that guy who sits on, the old quarterback analogy, right? Moylan said he still believes in reducing the BPT, and his new bill will work collectively with 2021 budget discussions. The issue involves more than just the price of goods, but is also about helping small businesses. We need to make sure that the revised measure will prevent the opposition from using scare tactics to public sector employees that such actions result in furloughs, since that is wrong. Oh, now what that has to do with his Bill 9, even I can't figure out. You guys with a long memory will remember when Moylan introduced his Bill 9, he drew a hefty round of criticism from this microphone right here, because his Bill 9 would not have made the rollback effective until the following October. So my advice was, if you want to do it now. You know, are you the kind of guy that goes in and buys a used car and you got $500 in your pocket? And the used car salesman says, would you like to make an offer, Mr. Moylan? Oh, yeah. All I got is $500. Sold. In other words, don't make it easy on the other side if you're going to do it. Which is exactly what he did. You know, after all of the talk about his bill and about rolling back the GRT and not being able to get it to the floor, they finally put it on the floor, and then they sabotage it by putting it on the floor. And then he says, well, that's not fair, because I want some time to make some amendments to the bill that I introduced back in January. So a little earlier, I mentioned the movie High Noon and Sands of Iwo Jima couple of my favorite movies, right up there with Casablanca, right? Yeah. So if you've never seen High Noon, I would really urge you to go on Netflix or wherever you can find it and watch it, because if you want to see an example of true bravery and heroism, it's just a movie, of course, but if you had any doubts about what it's all about, that movie would be pretty convincing. It's about a sheriff in a little dusty western town, probably be around the 1880s. And a sheriff, played by Gary Cooper, is hired to clean the town up because the town was being overrun by a bunch of ruffians. And Gary Cooper cleaned it up. And he sent the worst of the bunch, a guy named Frank Miller, off to the Yuma Territorial Prison. And Will's getting up in years. He finds a young girl to marry. He's turning in his badge. He's going to leave town, and he's going to go off and live happily ever after. No more gunplay, no more sheriff for him. And then he's packed and ready to go, and they find out that Frank Miller, the bad guy, is coming in on the train at 12 o'clock. Not 12 o'clock p.m. either. At noon. And the rest of the movie plays out from there. And I'm not going to spoil it for you. The way the movie turns out, great theme material, a great contrasting of values, some real examples of heroism, bravery, and things like that. But what I can tell you now is Will Kane is a guy who stood up for his principles, fought against overwhelming odds all by himself because he knew what was right and he was going to stand up for right no matter how much it cost him. Now, we've seen Jim Moylan kind of portraying that role from time to time. Most of the time, he's all by himself. And most of the time, he stands up for what's right. And most of the time, nobody wants to help him. So I took some of the lyrics here from Tall Tales and recast them given the unfortunate story that I just read you. And it goes like this. If you remember, it's a Tex Ritter song. It's a classic. I wish I had a singing voice. Real Joe Cruz, can you hum it?
I don't think so, sir.
Yeah, you're good at a lot of things, but that wouldn't be one of them. So it starts out, do not forsake me, O my colleagues, on this our voting day. Do not forsake me, O my colleagues. Wait along, wait along. The noonday train will bring Frank Miller, or maybe it's Joe San Augustine, right? If I'm a man, I must be brave, and I must face that deadly coward, or lie a coward, craven coward, or lie a coward in my grave. Oh, to be torn twixt colleagues and duties. Colleagues, of course, are the other senators, right? Supposing I lose my next election. Look at that big hand move along, nearing high noon. Okay, picking up with it. He, meaning Frank Miller, he made a vow while in state's prison that it would be my life or his'n. I'm not afraid of death, but oh, what will I do if I lose it? Meaning the election. Do not forsake me, O my colleagues. You never made that promise when we sat. Do not forsake me, O my colleagues. Although you're grieving, I can't be leaving until I shoot Frank Miller dead. So that's the way it should have gone, right? But when we get up here to the last part here, Do not forsake me, O my colleagues. Although you're grieving, I can't be leaving. Oh, Frank, hang on. I didn't put any bullets in my gun. Time out. That's basically what Jim did. He saw that the hands of that clock moving up towards high noon. He knew that Frank Miller's henchmen were in town, and they were all armed, and they were just waiting for Frank Miller, maybe Joe San Augustine, I don't know. They're just waiting for Frank Miller to get off that train. So Jim Moylan goes out there, you know, for the big shootout. And he looks at his pistol, and oh, shucks, I forgot to load my pistol. Time out, Frank Miller. We'll come back and do this in a couple hours, okay?
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Agagna and Tumon are now open for your dining experience. Necessary precautions and safety protocols were assessed in order to maintain a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. Join Mezcla in Agagna and Tumon locations for a true taste of Guam.
So here we are again. We're about 10 minutes away from that big halftime show. Next item on the card is Joni Kanga Kerr versus Michael San Nicolas. This is an article that appeared in today's Post, and the title of the article is Coalition Calls Attention to Long-Standing Issue of Injustice. Injustice is another word like fair. For most people, injustice means, yeah, I didn't get what I wanted, so that was an injustice, right? Little story about lawyers and justice. A lawyer was hired to represent a businessman in a case that was about 1,000 miles away from the businessman's headquarters. So the lawyer goes to trial. It's about a 4-day trial. It's hotly contested, fair amount of money riding on the trial. The trial's over. Lawyer gets a good result for his client. Calls his client in this 1,000-mile away city, and he tells him, "Boss, the trial's over." Boss, "How did it come out?" And the lawyer says, "Justice triumphed." And the boss says, "Well, then we'll appeal." Where's your snare drum there, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. Okay. In other words, justice triumph. Okay, justice triumph. Well, we can't have that. We'll appeal. So once again, you know, the way these articles are headlined and some of the phraseology is somewhat less than objective. So I'm going to dig into this article, and I think you'll see what I mean. Joni Kanga Kerr is about as obscure as Joan Ugan Chatfris, but she has inserted herself into the political status realm here. Joni Kanga Kerr is from the Guam Community College eco-warriors. And she and a few other guys, a guy from University Political Science Student Association, somebody from Ihagan Famalawan Guahan, and they're members of the Fanogi Coalition. The Fanogi Coalition. So let me... Fanogi, how na diablo?
You're standing, sir?
Hungan na, zahago na, basta na, Fanogi na. All right, so, yeah. Last December, more than 2,000 people joined the Fanogi March for Chamorro self-determination. Now, I'm going to do some analysis here, and I'm going to give some seasoned advice as to how this thing continually winds up as something that Joni calls an injustice. It was a momentous event that showed that there is broad support in the community from the Chamorro people's right of self-determination. Now, this is an op-ed. This isn't news. Chamorro self-determination, and by the way, they insist on spelling Chamorro wrong instead of spelling it Chamorro. They have a capital C, a capital H, which, anyhow, Chamorro self-determination is not tied to any political status. Wrong. But it's simply the principle that the Chamorro people have the right to express what they prefer for their island home and also be treated with dignity and respect in their island. You know, that's the latest buzzword, dignity and respect. I want to be treated with dignity and respect. I'm not a very dignified person, but I don't care. I want to be treated with dignity. Yeah. After several centuries of colonialization and political marginalization, self-determination is an issue of restorative justice and righting the wrongs of the past. Well, you got all the buzzwords in one paragraph. I'll give you that, Joni. The process of decolonization has long been delayed by federal interference, most notably the Davis case, which has confused the issue, giving the appearance that Chamorro self-determination is an issue of constitutionality and not about human rights and justice. I'm going to stop right here. When the government of Guam defended the Davis case, it was the government of Guam that defended the Davis case. It wasn't, quote, the Chamorros. So this article and most of the propaganda I see that is camouflaged under the words self-determination talks in terms of a discrete group called Chamorros. And if there is a discrete group called Chamorros, then that discrete group of Chamorros ought to be the ones who are saying, this is what we want, instead of trying to manipulate the territorial government into being their megaphone. Now remember, out there, you guys, you nationalistas, the government of Guam is the colonizers' government. The government of Guam was created by the colonizer. It's an act of Congress. 48 United States Congress, Section 1421 et sec. It's in the federal law books. So if you're not able to make the colonizer's government carry your message, are you surprised How can you be surprised? So when the government of Guam attempted to defend the Davis lawsuit, it was couched in constitutional terms. Davis said, 15th Amendment, guys. Let me read that first quickly here. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Okay, let's come back to this right after that big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Congress begins debating police reform. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, at a House committee hearing yesterday.
The Judiciary Committee hearing testimony on the need for reforms in law enforcement. The marquee witness, Philonise Floyd, who asked simply that his brother George's death not be in vain.
I'm here to ask you to make it stop. Stop the pain. Stop us from being tired.
Also at the hearing, Angela Underwood Jacobs, whose brother Patrick, a federal protective officer, was shot and killed in cold blood during Oakland's riots on May 29th.
Fox's John Roberts. Today, President Trump travels to Dallas for a roundtable meeting with religious and law enforcement leaders as protesters continue to hold a 7-block area in Seattle, declaring it autonomous from the United States. The president tweeting a message to Seattle's Mayor Jenny Durkan that domestic terrorists have taken over the area and urging her to take back your city now. Mayor Durkan tweeting the president should go back to his bunker. Protesters have ripped down more statues of historic figures they consider to be racist. Cheering as a statue of Jefferson Davis toppled in Richmond. Davis was the president of the Confederate States during the Civil War, Richmond its capital. In Portsmouth, Virginia, protesters beheaded statues of 4 Civil War soldiers, and in St. Paul, Minnesota, a statue of Christopher Columbus has been ripped down. The search continues for a man who shot 2 St. Louis Obispo County, California sheriff's deputies.
Witnesses have described the suspect in this case as a Hispanic male adult, about 5 feet 8 inches tall, 150 to 160 pounds, with dark curly hair and a beard.
Sheriff Ian Parkinson says one of the deputies shot in the head remains in serious condition. America is listening to Fox News.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
2 Idaho children not seen since last fall are missing no more.
A joint statement put out by the Woodcock and Ryan families confirms the bodies found on Chad Daybell's property are that of 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and 17-year-old Tylee Ryan. They were both last seen last September. Daybell married the children's mother, Lori Vallow, last November after his wife died. Vallow and Daybell are under investigation in connection to her death. Daybell was arrested after the remains were found Tuesday. He appeared on video before a judge from jail who told him the allegation is that he
did willfully conceal and or aid and abet another to willfully conceal human remains.
Another count accuses him of willfully destroying or altering human remains. Bail was set at $1 million. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Amazon banning the use of its facial recognition technology by law enforcement for 1 year. The company not saying why it's taking the action now. Critics say it can sometimes misidentify dark-skinned individuals. The State Department asking for an investigation into ousted Inspector General Steve Linick, fired last month as he reportedly was investigating arms sales to Saudi Arabia without congressional approval.
In a letter to the Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency, the State Department's Undersecretary for Management suggests Steve Linick may have hand-selected a potentially conflicted investigator to look into possible misconduct by his own office, and then withheld the resulting report. The letter also accuses Linick of repeatedly returning to his former office without authorization. Democrats are firing back, releasing a transcript of Linick's recent testimony, saying if State Department officials want to refute Mr. Linick's account, they can do so as the committees have requested, under the same questioning that Mr. Linick voluntarily faced. Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
As we emerge from the effects of the global pandemic, Security Title is rethinking how to best serve our customers. With our houses clean and closets reorganized, here's a reminder to take a look at the title to your house and other real estate. Is your trust in order? Is it time to update your wills? Do you have the best interest rate available on your home? As we get back to work, there's no better time to revisit your most valuable asset, your property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
This Father's Day, be one of 7 lucky winners of Circle K's Ultimate Father's Day Package. Get a case of tomahawk steak, a bottle of whiskey, a case of beer, and a Bacchus beer bag. That's a $300 value. Purchase $25 or more in fuel, or any 6-pack or more of Miller Lite, Coors Light, or Blue Moon to receive an entry form. Tune in to The Ray Gibson Show on The Point for more ways to win. Winners will be announced on June 17. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com or any Circle K location for more details.
Hafide, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, back again, and
I counted 11, sir.
Say again?
I counted 11 cannon blasts.
11. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Real good. An 11 gun salute for Tall Tales.
Yeah.
I got to look that up to see what the who else rates an 11 gun salute other than Tall Tales. Probably high state officials or something like that, right? Okay, so here we are back again on Tall Tales, and I just finished with the 15th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or infringed by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So that's what the Davis case was all about. And as I pointed out, for all you nationalists out there, all you separatists, the government of Guam is a creature of what you refer to as the colonizer. So if you are, let's see, if you're going to GCC or the university, you are attending institutions sponsored by your colonizer. So what I understand you're saying here is this, that there is a discrete people on the island called Chamorros, and that they want to determine what the political status of a piece of real property called the island of Guam should be. But they don't state it that way. The way they stated it here at the Commission on Decolonization is they want to determine what their political status is going to be. In other words, what should be the political status of Chamorros? And the skillful folks who put this stuff together have kind of maneuvered people into thinking that there are three real choices when there are actually only two. One choice is separation from the United States, and the other choice is not separating from the United States. I've explained too many times why statehood is not a practical outcome, and that free association is an impossibility. Free association, independence, Guam would have to become independent first before it could associate with anybody. So it's a theoretical will of the wisp. So that leaves just two options: independence from the United States or not independence from the United States. So if the Chamorros want to be independent from the United States, then the next question is, well, okay, let's use our imaginations here. And let's say that the United States Congress said, there is a group of people called Chamorros, and this is how we define the members of that group. And these people called Chamorros have the ability to become independent from the United States. Let's say that's how it works out. Now, where does that group just stay on Guam and say, okay, we're independent? Yeah, let's see who I've got on the line here. R. Fred. Okay. Good afternoon, R. Fred.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon. So, interesting topics you had from the BPT, GRT, and now this one here. So, here's my opinion on this. And interesting, kind of going off the angle you were saying about the they,
mm-hmm.
the most famous pronoun, right?
The hardest word in the English language, Fred.
Yeah, the they. I love that. So the they, as in Gov Guam, is the one actually trying to go towards this plebiscite and independent Guam and so forth, change of status. And the way you're putting it, how it's going to affect, who's it going to affect? The Chamorros of the public, the private citizens and the public. And wow, I mean, just to shed some light on it, we've kind of seen how they have handled Guam in this pandemic and continue to do so. Can you imagine how they will handle Guam if we were more independent from the United States, and what type of situation we'd be in? Do the Chamorros know what type of situation we'll be left in? I mean, we're already broke as it is. Our status will be more broker, if that's a term.
Good term, more broker.
Yeah, I think that's something to be fearful of, that they might put us in a worse situation than we are in already if we broke away further from the United States. I don't think, I hate the word think. I know that we shouldn't break away anymore from the United States. We can keep our identity as Chamorros, Guamanians, linked in together as Guamanians or Chamorros. We are one, and we can maintain our identity. I mean, you can just see that the GRT, lowering the GRT would have helped the Chamorro public and the Guamanian public. I like to use it. I just want to say Chamorro because you use that word, but Chamorro, Guamanian, one and the same. We're all here. So the GRT lowering it would have helped businesses and the customers from paying lower prices at the cashier. But they didn't want to even lower that and help the people at this stressful time already as it is. I don't understand. It's like a no-brainer. It's like 1 + 1. The legislature can't figure that out. It's lower the BPT. I mean, do you really think they're going to make, with all the businesses closing and moving, do you think they're even going to make 5% like they calculate to? I mean, if you lower it to 4 or 3, or with the Dave Santos Act, increase the threshold to $500,000 for businesses to keep it at 3%, they would have actually helped. Maybe there'd be some more business licenses coming out, new ones coming out next month or in August or so forth. That would incentivize businesses. I mean, keeping it at 5, you don't incentivize any business. Business that could open right now refuse to open until things are back to normal, because opening means payroll, taxes on negative revenue as it is, power bills, water, and whatever expenses, overheads that come, stocking the business, and so forth. So those businesses refuse to open right now. So if we lowered it, you're actually incentivizing them to even open, who are shut down because of whatever their own reasons. They could open up. Maybe new business would be like, oh, wow, this is a good time to open, and so forth. But we're making a negative situation more negative. So I don't know how they are helping us or helping the Chamorros in the first place. I mean, I think that they are the ones who really want this vote anyway, not the public. I think the public likes the U.S. flag and what comes with it. So that's my take on what you were saying earlier.
Well, I can't say that I disagree with anything that you say, Fred.
Yeah. The people of Guam need to, I think there's two voices going on here. The they voice, which is the Gov Guam, and there's a separate voice, which is the public, who actually like the way things are. They like the U.S. Status quo with Guam, and especially at this time when during the pandemic, how they're helping the local. I mean, it's only because through the U.S. government, federal government, that Guam is being helped in this manner with millions, and actually with the unemployment, even though no one has received it yet, but there's $1 billion coming to Guam. you can see how they are handling the federal money that's supposed to benefit the Guamanians here. So I don't think I need to say more. I think it says it all.
Well, I'm glad you called up and shared your opinions with us, Fred. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
See if you can shed some more light and make some sense into the public,
I'll keep trying, Fred. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so where was I here? Joni Kanga Kerr versus Michael San Nicolas. So the process of decolonization has long been delayed by federal interference, most notably the Davis case, which has confused the issue, giving the appearance that Chamorro self-determination is an issue of constitutionality and not about human rights and justice. Now, this is going to require some explanation here. First of all, the government of Guam is a creature of your colonizer, Joni. It's not something that is, quote, Chamorro, unquote. Now, in order for your argument to take wings, you're going to have to get someone or something or somebody to recognize the Chamorro people as a distinct group, like, say, a corporation or something like that. Poor analogy. But right now, if you read the Constitution and the laws of the United States, you don't find that there's any place in the Constitution or the laws of the United States to recognize a distinct group based on injustice, lack of self-determination, and human rights. And whenever I hear the term, I got to confess, Joni, whenever I hear the term human rights, I get scared. Because human rights is a phrase that people use when they want somebody else to pay for something that they want. When we talk about civil rights or constitutional rights, I know exactly what that means. I can go right here to my U.S. Constitution and I can figure it out. And what it amounts to is stuff that the government is not going to do to us. But when we're talking human rights, it's stuff we want the government to do for us. Health care is a human right. Substantial housing is a human right. Well, whenever you start talking human right, what you're talking about is taking resources away from one group or one person and giving it to another person. That's what you're talking about when you're talking human rights. So what we're talking about here is the self-determination of the Chamorro people. Well, let's say that the Chamorro people, and the Chamorro people, if there is a group, an identifiable group called Chamorro people, can determine what their favored political status is. They don't need the help of the colonizer in order to do that. They could just go ahead and do it. But they don't want to do that. The separatists don't want to do that. They want to use the colonizer's government as their megaphone to broadcast their message. And the government of Guam, being a creature of the colonizer, is bound by the United States Constitution. If you don't like that, if you'd rather go off on human rights and justice, then don't try to make the government of Guam do your bidding. I'll come back to this in a second, but I notice I've got the usual suspects on the phone here, meaning R. Carl, and then another Fred. There is another Fred. Okay, I'm going to start out here with R. Carl. Good afternoon, R. Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, the one thing that makes me nervous about this movement is to me it's clear it's a leftist movement. I mean, when you listen to the rhetoric, it's very much very similar to what we hear on the college campuses and what we hear going on now. As a matter of fact, They even brought over Black Lives Matter to have them have an event, a protest.
And they're lining up because they have similar interests. One of the stories I read, the Independence Guahan movement said, well, we're identifying with them because we want self-determination, and they want self-determination too.
Yeah, there's a bias, and they're taking advantage of a mental bias we have. We have a consistency bias. Once we agree to something, it's that much easier for the person trying to sell you on something to agree to something else. So if they get people to bow or to kneel or to say the pledge or whatever, it's just that much easier to get them to agree to other agendas too. They've cracked the egg. They've broken the wall, and it just becomes that much easier. You have momentum, and there's something in human nature that is it craves consistency. So, as I said before, the core leadership of this is very sophisticated. There's nothing accidental about what's going on. And as I think you mentioned, the three original founders, the three female founders of Black Lives Matter are open and avowed communists. And if you read their agenda and what they're after, it's very similar to the Communist Party line. And one thing that bothers me about that is what will happen if they succeed and the United States, and we separate from the United States, and more concerning, from our protections of our personal freedoms under the Constitution. As other leftist movements have done. Every single major leftist movement started off as a social justice movement. Every single one of them. Cuba, North Korea, Venezuela, Russia, China, Vietnam, all of them have been social justice movements. And I think there's this feeling that, sovereignty is some magical sauce, or powder that if you pour it on, everything is going to be wonderful. But what happens is when you empower an elite to bring about social justice, you've given them enough power to create an authoritarian government. And then things really start to go wrong. In Venezuela and Cuba and North Korea, the people are suffering, terribly. But it doesn't matter. As long as they're in power, that's all that matters. General Hugo Chavez, I think it was 1999 when he was elected, and Venezuela had the largest oil reserves on the planet. And things progressively began to go downhill to the point where they're now eating their pets, they're eating zoo animals. I think they've eaten all the zoo animals already. It's horrible there. But you don't see the elites in power suddenly say, I think we're wrong. I think we should give up power and give it back to the people and have free elections. They have no interest in giving up power. One of Hugo Chavez's children, there was an article in Wall Street Journal. One of her children was worth an estimated over $4 billion. Their finance minister escaped with over $11 billion to Switzerland. When Hugo Chavez died, he was worth an estimated over $1 billion. So you still have the same problem with human greed. That doesn't go away. We have our share in our present state of government, but just changing it to a more leftist government isn't going to solve that. You're just going to empower people who have their own personal self-interest to do bad things. And if we think we're having problems now, just imagine a government separated from the Constitution and from our present justice system. I remember years ago, after one of the judgments against or for Dave Davis, that one of the spokesmen for the movement came out and called the justice system the colonizers' justice system. And if they have, if they have a problem with the justice system, which protects our property rights and our life, liberty, and property, what exactly did they have in mind? Returning to the...
Well, they, whoever they are right. It is the colonizers' justice system, and that's the point that I've been making. And then, of course, none of the separatists have said a word about what they would envision for an independent Guam. But when they start out with the proposition of saying, we're not going to let everybody vote, that doesn't send a very good message to anybody as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and if, there's this big craze about let's return to the indigenous ways, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that the indigenous Chamorro system was a caste system. There was the royal class, the elites, and then there were the regular people,
and then a bottom class called the Manatsang that weren't allowed.
And you couldn't move from the bottom. You can't move from the bottom class to the top class. There's just this elite class, and you're just stuck with it. Just like in India, if you're born in the lowest caste, too bad. You're never going to get out of that. So since we're moving in that direction of returning to the indigenous original ways, is that what they have in mind? Will we have a elder council that will decide, all legal issues? Where exactly are they? What are they envisioning? And I think that's one reason why they're not specific, is because there is no specific plan. And if there are, they're not interested in bringing it out for public scrutiny, because the public would probably be very upset about what they have in mind. Anyway, that's just a couple of thoughts I have about your comments.
Got a break for the seventh inning stretch, Carl. And after the seventh inning stretch, I've got another Fred and Tina, who will have their chance to talk to the international radio listening audience. So we'll see you right after the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile Team. Suite 119 in the East-West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile Team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
What did we have? Some Black Lives Matter demonstrators there outside the park?
Yes, sir. We kicked them out.
Good for you. All right. Okay, I've got another Fred. Tina didn't want to hang on. Tina, as soon as I'm finished with another Fred, call back in and we'll get you on the air right away. Good afternoon,
Hi,
another Fred.
Hi, Rob. This is another Fred. I agree with, I like the discussion regarding the Davis versus the people of Guam, but I'd like to shift a little bit of your conversation to the dilemma that I and many of the private sector employees are faced due to the hardworking people at the Department of Labor under the guidance of the very efficient manager, Mr. De La Sola.
I'll tell you what, another Fred, I'll allow it. Gavel, please.
Well, like I said, a simple one. We've been waiting for the program for months now, and I, like a lot of our people in the private sector, are blue-collar workers. We're not carpenters, plumbers, busboys, table cleaners, dishwashers, and so we need help, and we've been asked to or implored by Mr. De La Sola to be patient. But after a while, I think Mr. De La Sola needs to take the Tony Babauta route and resign, because it just shows that he is not capable of handling this problem. And I'd like to, like I said, a lot of our workers are silent, but they're hurting. And I'd like to, again, the buck stops at the top, and the governor should just ask for his resignation. I know that the Magahaga has said that they've been working hard and they try and try and try, but it's a lie after lie and after lie, and we're getting frustrated. I'll shut up and listen to your program and your remarks.
Okay, another Fred, thanks for calling in. Well, first of all, another Fred, I don't know that the governor could ask for David De La Sola's resignation because he hasn't spent any time on the 19th floor. And I think that's a condition precedent to being booted out of the government. You got to spend some time on the 19th floor. Second thing I'm going to say, another Fred, is this, that when someone says be patient in the face of something that you really shouldn't be patient about, my usual response is this: I don't have any patience. I never had any patience. To me, patience is a vice. It's not a virtue. Get your job, do your job. That's my advice, another Fred. Okay, so Joni, if you want to call back in, we'll get you on the air right away. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about Joni Kanga Kerr versus Michael San Nicolas. Was it Joni that called? I'm sorry, Tina, yeah, not Joni, Tina. My bad, Tina. Call back in. We'll get you right on the air. Okay, so the process of decolonization has long been delayed by federal interference, most notably the Davis case, which can confuse the issue, giving the appearance that Chamorro self-determination is an issue of constitutionality and not about human rights and justice. Well, if it is about human rights and justice, then the arguments that the government has made on behalf of the Chamorro people are wrong, because the government of Guam has never made any arguments concerning Chamorro self-determination based on human rights and justice. In fact, the government of Guam attempted to finesse the issue by saying this really isn't about Chamorro self-determination. This is about, what is the term that's used? Descendants, right? I forgot that term already. Descendants of those who, I'm pulling a Jim Moylan here. I'm right in the middle of a conversation. I don't have the word. I'm looking, native inhabitants. Yeah. That was the finesse, that this isn't about Chamorros. It's about people that were here when the Organic Act became law and became U.S. citizens by virtue of the Organic Act. In other words, they belong to a class created by the United States government. That was one of the arguments. The other argument was that the so-called plebiscite that the government of Guam law has contemplated is not an election. That was the government's position. It's not an election, so it should be able to go forward. Well, those arguments didn't bear any fruit, and they didn't answer the question that you want answered, Joni Kanga Kerr. The question that you want is this, the questions that you want answers to. Will the United States of America government, Congress, etc., recognize a discrete group of people called the Chamorro people who have certain group rights that no one else in the United States has? And if that certain group of people called the Chamorro people does have group rights, then isn't one of their rights their ability to determine whether they want to be a state, freely associated, or independent? Now, if the Chamorro people decided that they wanted to be a state, I can't imagine how that would work. Because we all know what a state looks like and what it feels like. We've got 50 of them. But the states are geographic designations. The state of Texas is a large chunk of land in the south and southwest of the United States. So if the Chamorro people are to be a state, where is their real estate? Now, of course, the answer that everyone is supposed to completely understand is, well, that would be Guam, because Guam is the historical homeland of Chamorros. Well, that's not the question that that's not the question that the Commission on Decolonization is asking. They're not asking that question. They're asking a question about the Chamorro people, although now they want to camouflage it and call it native inhabitants. So if you're not asking the question that you want an answer to, it's almost like, I think it's the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any old map will do. And that's where we are. So if we're talking about the Chamorro people and self-determination, you wind up with this, okay, so the Chamorro people have decided what political status they like. Does that have some implication for this 210 square mile island we call Guam? Because that's not what anybody's voting on, and that's not even what the rhetoric is about. So if you phrase your questions like this, is there a you're gonna lose if the Chamorro people could have persuaded the government, instead of mounting arguments that address the constitutional aspects of Davis's case, if they could have mounted arguments like this: what Davis says may be right, but it doesn't matter, because there is a distinct identifiable group called the Chamorro people. And the Chamorro people are the Aboriginal people of Guam. And because they are the Aboriginal people of Guam, they have a right that American law must recognize to determine what the political status of that piece of land called the island of Guam is. That's the question that you want the courts to answer. Now, I think I know what the answer is going to be. But if you're a Supreme Court buff like I am, you'll understand that there's a term that goes like this: Sometimes petitioners ask the Supreme Court to write new law. In other words, to go where the law has never gone before. You may not think so, but Brown versus Board of Education was that kind of a case. Brown versus Board of Education, everybody, oh yeah, you know, equality in the schools, et cetera. But what it really stands for is this, that the Supreme Court is going to act like sociologists and determine that when you separate two different groups of people by their race, this is going to be detrimental to one of those people, one of those groups of people, one of those groupings. And that's never been the law in the United States before. It wasn't the law in Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson went the other way. Plessy versus Ferguson said, yeah, you can divide people into two groups, blacks and whites, so long as you treat them equally, no problem. But the Supreme Court in 1954 in Brown versus Board of Education wrote new law saying the mere fact that you separate those into two groups is of itself unconstitutional. The Supreme Court wrote new law. So if you separatists like Joni Kanga Kerr want to use the colonizers' government here, which is the government of Guam, created by federal statute, and you want to use the colonizers' justice system, and you're going to spend $1 million, which is what you spent, what we spent, what I spent, what we all spent, defending the Davis case on constitutional grounds, then what the Chamorro people need to do, you got two options. One option would be to convince the Attorney General of Guam to follow the argument that I just followed when the appropriate case comes up, or two, constitute yourselves as the Chamorro people of Guam and divorce yourself from the colonizers' government and go out and petition on your own behalf. You know, I got to remind you that, you know, when the United States is a country created by a revolution, and we all learned that in school, right? And we all learned that that the 13 colonies wanted to get away from King George, the British Parliament. They wanted to be, at the time, they wanted to be 13 independent countries. So they declared their independence, and they fought for their independence. But it didn't happen overnight. There was a lead into it. There were propagandists, Thomas Paine, Common Sense, etc. But not once in those pre-revolutionary days did the Confederation of States ever petition the British Parliament for money to educate the people in the colonies about self-determination. And that's where you are right now. You've persuaded the government of Guam to petition the United States Congress to send out $300,000 so that the colonizer can teach the Chamorros about self-determination. If you're paying attention now and you're saying none of this makes a whole lot of sense, you're right. Because if you're going to be for real Chamorro self-decolonization and independence is the option, then you can't use the colonizer's government as your tool. If you had a strategy, I could see a strategy where you somehow formed a group called the Chamorro people, and you sent petitioners to the U.S. Congress and said, hello, I'm Michael Bavacqua. I am the Magatlahi of the Chamorro people, and I'm here to petition the United States Congress to declare the independence of Guam. Guam wants to be a sovereign, independent country. Do for us the same thing that you did for the Philippines in 1946. Please, Congress, do that. That is logical from a standpoint of the law. But to beat up on local officials and to get them to come along and say, we want independence, probably not a very good idea. Now, going on with the op-ed piece here, the process of decolonization has long been delayed by federal interference, notably the Davis case. If the process has been delayed, it's because it never really started. More than a century ago, the United States made a commitment to the Chamorro people to assist in their political development, and the U.S. reaffirmed this commitment by placing Guam on the United Nations list of non-self-governing territories. Now, Real Joe Cruz, this is a very clever way of writing. The United States made a commitment to the Chamorro people. Now, I've read this stuff. I don't see the word Chamorro people in there anywhere. But the sentence says the United States made a commitment to the Chamorro people to assist in their political development, and the U.S. reaffirmed this commitment by placing Guam. In other words, Chamorro people and Guam are synonymous. They both mean the same thing. The recent refusal of the United States Supreme Court to hear the government of Guam's appeal in the Davis case is not the end of this process. As the Finogi March last year reminded us, this issue is one of local justice. A conversation amongst all of those who call Guam their home. Well, I call Guam my home, and I don't know much about Joni Kerr, but if she's a GCC Eco Warrior, I got a feeling it's been my home a lot longer than it's been hers. Okay, let's take a short break here, and we'll come back for the home stretch with Joni Kanga Kerr.
Oro makunom, matana lom suman kumin healthy and niceness. Karingin kumniki mitsaye nakshike sinjing kinyen fashil klan ma saying inwang takayani and wang napashali matana lom suman. Akayakom ace mongle ashosh kamofal esukomines be vitamin nasum. Karingin gupsifena in niceness in tia apashali. O about to kungom som na yen, tia kan motom, infame, inwelum, e aknas na siyen kumatakyan. Inaksafye ako la. Arela emergency contact list lom, aroy nash mo aknas nas ko onlo in lom suman, nakarangin in jash mit masin lom suman. Aro makuno minako ye aknas na siyen kuam in nasnas ain safe. Nanakmanas, matana in lom suman. Message saying e masin manyetlu, Micronesian Resource Center at Choice Broadcasting.
This Father's Day, be one of 7 lucky winners of Circle K's Ultimate Father's Day Package. Get a case of tomahawk steak, a bottle of whiskey, a case of beer, and a Bacchus beer bag. That's a $300 value. Purchase $25 or more in fuel, or any 6-pack or more of Miller Lite, Coors Light, or Blue Moon to receive an entry form. Tune in to The Ray Gibson Show on The Point for more ways to win. Winners will be announced on June 17. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com or any Circle K location for more details.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit HorizonPropertiesGuam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so picking up on Joni Kanga Kerr versus Michael San Nicolas, the last sentence I read is the Finogi March last year reminded us this issue is one of local justice, a conversation amongst all of those who call Guam their home about the type of community we will be looking ahead. Well, I'm not encouraged by the kind of community we would be looking ahead to, prompted by the Chamorro separatists, when the first thing that group does is see to it that some of the people who live here can't vote. So, it's one of the foundations of no matter where you live is to be able to vote. And we start out with a proposition, well, no, it's going to be a conversation for all of us, except some of you guys can't vote. It is one in which people, despite federal indifference and interference, those who are the island's elected leaders must continue to lead. Now, remember, the elected leaders are elected to what? The Chamorro Council? The Chamorro Club for Self-Government? The Hakan Samoru? No, they're elected to the colonizers' government. Remember that? In hopes of reminding our elected leaders of the need to address this long-standing issue of local justice, 36 nonprofits, now this is pretty good too, 36 nonprofits, every one of them's got at least 3 members, but by God, there are 36 of them. Organizations and networks collaborated to become the Finogi Coalition. I'm going to start my own coalition called the Fatatsun Coalition, Real Joe Cruz.
Sit down.
Yeah. Last month, we wrote a letter to Imagahagan Guahan, all 15 members of Leslaturan Guahan, and Guam's current non-voting delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. Boy, that's the big colonizer government. In this letter, the coalition called on them to affirm their support for the right of the Chamorro people to self-determination. In response, Imagahahan Guahan, Lou Leon Guerrero, Speaker of Leslaturan Guahan, Tina Munya Barnes, declared an emergency affecting the health and safety of the people, and signed Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, signed but puts parentheses around her signature, Tello Taitagui and Therese Terlahi all wrote statements expressing their full support. A survey was provided to the remaining 11 senators asking for their stance. The remaining 11 senators all answered Hongan, affirming their support. At present, despite several letters, emails, and calls, Congressman Michael San Nicolas is the sole elected leader of Guam who has not affirmed his support for the rights of the Chamorro people. What kind of sound effect do I need for that one? Do you have one for shame? What would work for shame? No, that's surprise. That's for me. Yeah. At present, several letters, emails, and calls, Congressman Michael San Nicolas is the sole elected leader of Guam who has not affirmed his support for the rights of the Chamorro people.
Shame.
Boy, what's that guy thinking of? Michael St. Nicholas. He is not affirmed. He's not, he said, when Jim Moylan gets finished with the bandwagon, ask me again. Yeah. I always like to use this one when there's one guy standing out, and when there's one Will Kane walking down the streets of Hadleyville, and all of the people in town are chickening out, and Will Kane says, "I won't be run off. Where's Frank Miller? I'm going to shoot Frank Miller dead." So we're going to give Michael St. Nicholas the Will Kane Award for today. Yeah, the one that slipped through Jim Moylan's fingers. And I always like to repeat this. Sometimes the leader is the one who keeps in step with the drummer even when everyone else in the platoon is out of step. Yeah. Okay, so much for Tall Tales for today. We'll be winding the week up tomorrow, my saddest day of the week, but we'll see you then.